Hi, how's everybody doing? Welcome to the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. And guess what? It is me, your guy, the young brother of Soul. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to the Oakland Wildcats because my daughter cheers for the cheerleading squad and for the football team because their homecoming is on Saturday. So hopefully to see everybody there on Saturday. And I also want to give a shout out to my hometown team, the Philadelphia Phillies, who are in the 2025 playoffs. They play the LA Dodgers. So hopefully, I'm predicting it. A 2025 World Series will be coming to the city of Philadelphia. And not only that, give a shout out to Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, who has over 50 home runs. Yeah, we play against the defending World Series champion, LA Dodgers. So, yeah, they're going to give us a little, but I'm not really scared of them because we're Philadelphia and they're LA. So, yeah. So, on today's episode on the Young Brother Soul podcast show, I want to talk about NFL teams that do not have Super Bowls. Well, yeah, I think we already know who do and don't have Super Bowls, so yeah, I'm gonna do it anyway. So there are 32 football teams in the NFL. Yeah, 32, believe it or not. And not only that, there are 12 NFL teams that do not have a Super Bowl. Four of them have not appeared in a Super Bowl. Yeah, believe it or not, those four that have not appeared in a Super Bowl, well, the youngest NFL team is the Houston Texans. They came in the league in 2002, so yeah, they definitely have not made an appearance, but they made it to the playoffs a few times, but no, they have not made the Super Bowl, so they're 0 and 0 and 0. Yeah. Another team that has not made it to the Super Bowl, the Jacksonville Jaguars. But one thing I do give the Jacksonville Jaguars, their second year in the league, they made it to the AFC Championship. They debuted in 1995 and they went to the 1996 AFC Championship, which they lost to the New England Patriots that year. So, yeah, that was close. You NFL team that made it to a conference championship your second year as an expansion, yeah, that's an accomplishment. Then of course they lost the 1999 AFC Championship to the Tennessee Titans, and they lost the 2017 AFC Championship to the New England Patriots. That was a close game. The Jaguars actually had the league in that game, but they blew a lead, and the Patriots, of course, came back. So yeah, another team that did not make it to the Super Bowl, the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Cleveland Browns, oh boy, what can you say about the Cleveland Browns? I mean, they did win NFL championships. Well, before the NFL, they won the AAFC championships back in 1946, 47, 48, 49. They won the NFL championships back in 1950, 54, 55, and 64. Yeah, pre Super Bowl era. 1964 was their last time they won the NFL championship. So, yeah, poor Cleveland Browns fans. But they did make it to the AFC Championship. Well, about those AFC Championships that they lost. 1986, they lost the drive to John Elway. Oh boy, poor Cleveland fans. They could have stopped them, but they did over what 90 yards for the drive. Yeah. Then of course the next year they went against the Broncos again. The fumble. Yeah, the running back fumbled the ball. What they were at the end zone. Then, of course, they lost the 1989 AFC Championship to the Broncos. What? The Broncos have the Browns' number. Yes, they do. In the AFC Championship. Wow. The last team out of the four that didn't make it to the Super Bowl, the Detroit Lions. Oh, wait. Detroit Lions fans. Poor Detroit Lions fans. Well, they did win NFL championships 1935, 1952, 53, and 57, which was the last time that they won a championship. Of course, we already know what happened with their great quarterback Bobby Lane, and then of course the next year they traded him. But Yeah, the Lions definitely have not made it to the Super Bowl. They made two NFC Championships appearances in 1991, which they lost to the Washington Redskins, and in 2023, which they had the lead in the NFC Championship, and then the San Francisco 49ers came back and beat them. So, yeah, no Super Bowl appearance. Those are the four that has no Super Bowl appearance. Now, the other teams at least made a Super Bowl appearance, and starting off with that list, of course, is the Arizona Cardinals. Well, they didn't really win the 1925 NFL championship, but they did win the 1947 NFL championship, which they beat the Eagles. And yeah, that was the last time they won the championship. And they did beat the Eagles in the 2008 NFC championship, but they did lose Super Bowl 43 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, I mean, that was a close game. Before San Antonio, Holmes caught that amazing catch, Larry Fitzgerald ran it in for a touchdown. So yeah, yeah, there was that guy San Antonio Holmes. He crushed Cardinals fans that Super Bowl. So ugh, poor Cardinals fans. They did make it to the 2015 NFC Championship, but they lost to the Carolina Panthers. So yeah, 0-1 in the Super Bowl for the Arizona Cardinals. Another team that made to the Super Bowl appearance but did lose is the Tennessee Titans. Well, of course, the Tennessee Titans were the Houston Oilers, but they went back to back AFC championships, which they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers in 78 and 79, which, of course, was that time was the Steelers' dynasty that year. But in the 1979 AFC championship, the Oilers did lose the AFC championship to one of the most controversial calls in the NFL. That might be another episode coming soon about controversial calls, but we'll talk about that later. And they made it to Super Bowl 34, which they lost to the St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf. They were close winning that Super Bowl, but they lost to Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt. They lost by 1 yard when the late great Steve McNair, threw to Kevin Dyson. But yeah, they still lost, and of course, they made it back to the 2019 AFC Championship, which they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. So, yeah, 0-1 in the Super Bowl. Another team that's 0-1 in the Super Bowl, the LA Chargers. Well, at the time, they were the San Diego Chargers, and they lost Super Bowl 29 to the San Francisco 49ers. But before then, they did win the AFL championship, which was 1963. Then, of course, they lost the 1980 and the 1981 AFC championship. But they did beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 1994 AFC championship, but they got blown out in Super Bowl 29 to the San Francisco 49ers. Steve Young threw 6 touchdowns, so yeah. Then, of course, they made it back to the 2007 AFC championship, but they lost to the perfect New England Patriots. I mean, Philip Rivers played that AFC championship with a torn ACL, but they still lost. So, yeah, that's another team that did not win a Super Bowl. Another team, 0-2, the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Carolina Panthers debuted back in 1995, right? And then their second year, they made it to the NFC Championship, but they lost to the Green Bay Packers, who eventually won the Super Bowl that year. Can you imagine if the Panthers and the Jaguars played in the Super Bowl and their second year in the league from an expansion team? That would have been a heck of a Super Bowl. But they did win the 2003 NFC Championship. Of course, they played against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, which was a heck of a game during the second half. But they still lost. by a field goal. Adam Vinatieri. Oh, the great Adam Vinatieri. And then, of course, they lost the 2005 NFC Championship to the Seattle Seahawks, who had a good year that year. Then in 2015, they went to Super Bowl 50, and they played against the Denver Broncos and that good defense. And yeah, the Denver Broncos, they Cam Newton fumbled twice. Cam Newton. Oh boy. Another team that lost another Super Bowl that did not win the Super Bowl, of course. The Atlanta Falcons. Oh boy, where do I start with the Atlanta Falcons? Of course, they went to the Super Bowl in 1998. They beat the favorite Minnesota Vikings in the NFC Championship, which they lost to the Broncos, who just won a Super Bowl the year before that. They went to the 2004 NFC Championship, but they lost. They went to the 2012 NFC Championship, but they lost. And of course, they went to Super Bowl 51. Ho, 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 boy. Super Bowl 51. What did they do? They had a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. How do you have a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl and let the team come back? I mean, yeah, they did play Tom Brady, but still, you have a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, and it was to the point it went to overtime, and the Patriots came back and won the game. And to be honest with you, the Falcons have not been the same after that. 2 years before that, the Seattle Seahawks, I still don't understand why you threw the ball at the 1 yard line. I mean, y'all could have been back to back Super Bowl champions, but yeah, that's another thing we'll talk about later, I guess. Oh boy. Another team that did not win the Super Bowl, the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals, oh boy, 0-3 in the Super Bowl. I mean, they lost twice to the 49ers. They lost twice to the 49ers. And the first Super Bowl, they could not get past the goal line. And then the second Super Bowl, Joe Montana drove down the field. And of course, they went back to the Super Bowl in 2021, but they lost to the LA Rams. So they were a little close winning the Super Bowl, but a guy by the name of Aaron Donald broke that up because, yeah, they 0-3. And they went back to the AFC Championship in 2022, which they lost to the Chiefs. But yeah, the Cincinnati Bengals are 0-3 in the Super Bowl. Now, to the last two teams. Oh boy. The last two teams are 0-4. Now, this team that I'm getting ready to talk about is the Buffalo Bills. Yes, the Buffalo Bills are 0-4 in the Super Bowl. I mean, they did win the AFL championship back in 1964 and 65, but yeah, that was the AFL. Of course, they had NFL and AFL championships. That was the pre-Super Bowl. But they made it to the AFC Championship in 1988, which they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. And then come the early 90 Bills. Boy. Super Bowl 25. I believe if they would have won Super Bowl 25, the Bills would have been a non-laughing stock because the kicker missed the field goal with a couple seconds left to the New York Giants. They lost by 1 point. Wide right. Then the next year they lost to the Washington Redskins at that time. Thurman Thomas loses his helmet. I still don't understand how you lose your helmet. Then the last two they got blown out by Dallas. Oh boy. Yeah, the Buffalo Bills are definitely 0-4 in the Super Bowl. But they did make it back to the 2020 and the 2024 AFC Championship, but they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. So, yeah, for some reason, the Kansas City Chiefs has the Buffalo Bills number. Yeah. And then the last team that is 0-4 in the Super Bowl. Mm, 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 mm. The Minnesota Vikings. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Just to let y'all know, The Minnesota Vikings are the last NFL team to win an NFL championship back in 1969. And of course, the Kansas City Chiefs was the last AFL champions to win an AFL championship. Well, they lost Super Bowl 4 to the Chiefs. They got blown out 23-7. Yeah, they were really, I believe they were favored because they were 12-2. Their defense, the Purple People Eater, but they still lost. Then they lost Super Bowl 8 to the Miami Dolphins, who previously won the Super Bowl the year before that, their perfect season. They lost 24-7. Then the next year they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers 16-6, which was the beginning of the Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty of the 1970s. Yeah. Then they lost Super Bowl 11 to the Oakland Raiders. Oh boy, the Oakland Raiders had a tremendous offensive line. Art Shell, Gene Upshaw. Their O line was so good that the late great Jim Marshall didn't even have a tackle in the Super Bowl against Oakland. So yeah, yeah. They lost the 1977 NFC Championship to the Dallas Cowgirls. Of course, the Cowgirls won the Super Bowl that year, their second Super Bowl. Lost the 87 NFC Championship to the Washington Redskins at the time. They their last play, fourth down, they threw the ball incompletion near the red zone. Then, of course, you have the 1998 NFC Championship. Oh boy, they were 15-1 that year. They played against the Atlanta Falcons. Of course, we already know how that game ended. Their kicker missed the field goal. Atlanta came back and scored, tied it. You had a couple seconds left for the game, and you mean to tell me that their coach elected to go to overtime? You had the great Randall Cunningham, not the Randall Cunningham that played for the Eagles. You had the Randall Cunningham, the pocket Randall Cunningham. Randy Moss, Rookie of the Year. Then you had Chris Carter. You had two timeouts left. And you mean to tell me you're going to elect to go to overtime? You could have threw the ball down the field. The kicker probably could have made up for the kick that he missed. But, yeah. Oh, boy. They made it to the 2000 NFC Championship, but they got blown out by the New York Giants 41 to nothing. Oh my goodness. How do you 41 nothing. They made it back to the NFC Championship against the New Orleans Saints, but the Saints won in overtime. But Brett Favre, instead of him running the ball out of bounds, he ran and threw the ball across his body, and Tracy Porter intercepted it. Like, come on, man. This is the NFC Championship. What are you doing? Then, of course, they lost the NFC Championship to my hometown, the Philadelphia Eagles. And what's crazy is in that year, the Super Bowl was played in Minnesota. So, of course, the Vikings had that miracle play against the New Orleans Saints. You know, Stephen Diggs caught the pass and ran it for a touchdown. Well, Vikings and their fans thought that they were going to come to Philadelphia and take over. Well, something told me that they were going to score first and then we were going to score the rest, which actually what we did. We blew the Vikings out in the NFC Championship 38-7. So, yeah, Vikings fans, that was the last time they was in the NFC Championship. And the last time they was in the Super Bowl was Super Bowl 11. That was in 1976. So, yeah, Vikings fans, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you. Now, is there a time where all these teams that don't have a Super Bowl, will they ever win? Who knows? But as of right now, there are the only teams that have not won a Super Bowl. So, yeah, like I said, four of them didn't appear in it. Two of them are one of the oldest teams in the league. Of course, that's the Lions and the Browns. Well, the Lions and Browns, yeah. Then of course you have 0-4 like the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings. To this day I still don't understand how do you make four straight Super Bowls and lose all four of them? Like how is that possible? Like you got to at least win one, but yeah, those are the teams in the NFL that do not have a Super Bowl. Yeah, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you do me a favor before this video ends? I'm gonna need y'all to hit that thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, hit that notification button. And I also want everybody here to know to be safe and enjoy the rest of your night. And thank you for watching another episode on the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. Y'all have a good one.